Revealed knowledge is what Krishna spoke to Arjuna. And what we are all as students of Gita trying to attempt is acquire this knowledge and apply that knowledge to make it a realization. So knowledge has three aspects to it, and all are at play when we go through a Gita session. Let's look at the first slide. What is the strength of Gita? Most of us know that Gita is an important text. Gita has a lot of learnings. It is the bedrock of our religion. It's a worldwide famous literature, but that is just having a very superficial understanding of Gita. Actually, if you just go through a broad listing that I have come here in this slide, you'll understand that this is something which we should never ever miss an opportunity to learn and understand. Why do I say that? Because this is a book which opens all. This is a philosophy which embraces all. Krishna says, whatever you are dear to me. There is no caste, there is no religion, there is no creed, there is no economic status. You could be anybody. It doesn't matter. You are dear to me. So Krishna is highly impartial. He is the Lord. Gita never imposes anything. This is not a book of commandments. There is no order. You must follow this. There is no rigidity. It's all about adaptability. It's a matter of choice. Krishna gives you three basic yogas. Yoga is connection to God. We will see in the following slides. He says you can reach me through Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. If you are a student of Bhakti, then you can go further down. It is called Karma Mishra Bhakti, Karma Mishra Yoga, Jnana Mishra Yoga. So you can Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So you can further classify and decide what suits you best. Krishna is available to all of us in all paths equally. Then he says, let us say you find it difficult. And he's giving a profound statement. It looks so simple, It says, or just have faith in me to obtain salvation. I would say this is the most simple looking statement with the most profound meaning. If you look at all our gurus, the Pandits, the the Adi Shankaracharya, who are completely surrendered to the Lord. They don't do anything for the whole day throughout their lifetime except having faith and praying to the Lord. That is having faith in Krishna. Very few of us can reach that stage. Next he says, love me and find ultimate solution to worldly problems. So what is Gita trying to tell us is that how to live in this world and how to leave this world. So it is giving you preparation for the future and preparation for the present. Interpretation is the greatest offense. So that's one thing which comes out very clearly in the introduction. This is Shabd Pramana. This is truth, absolute truth. You cannot challenge this, you cannot judge this, you cannot say that I think so. There is no pre-qualification, no analysis. It is absolute. Just accept as it is. That's why when Srila Prabhupada wrote Bhagavad Gita, he called it Bhagavad Gita as it is. He says, I am not qualified to say a word more or less than what Krishna has said. And as I mentioned, anyone can follow this path. Nothing comes in the way, open to all. And the beauty is there's no fine print. There's no conditions applied. If you do this, only then you can achieve me. Absolutely not. It is free, fair, open. Let's move to the next. So this gives you the beauty of Gita. It is such a strong Vedic literature. The only scripture, if I would describe it, is something which is within reach of all of us to read, understand, and apply in our lives. If I go to Rig Veda, I go to Sama Veda, I go to other Vedas, it is so difficult to understand. First and foremost, it is difficult to get access to that. It is very difficult to get translation in the languages that we desire, whereas Gita is available in all languages, in all countries across the world. So this is called the summary of all Vedas. So if you read Gita, it is like you have read Vedanta Sutra. You don't have to really struggle, make effort to read anything more. That is the advantage that we have by going through Gita. Now we start the basics of the introduction course. So here I quote a verse from Charitamrita, Chaitanya Charitamrita. He was the avatar of Krishna who appeared in this world 500 years back. He says, Veda Shastra kahe sambandha abhidheya prayojana Krishna prapya sambandha bhakti praptera sadhana. What is the meaning of this? It says, any Vedic literature, Krishna is the central point of attraction. Veda Shastra kahe. There are three processes which we have to be aware of. That is Sambandha, Abhidheya, and Prayojana. We'll see each one of them slowly. So the ultimate goal of life is understand Krishna, try and get yourself engaged in Krishna's service, and dedicate most of your time to inculcate love for Krishna. If you are able to do this, then you have the greatest riches of life as a human being. This is the clear message which comes through when you start reading Gita. So we should be aware of these three steps, these three processes. What are those? Sambandha. The word sambandha itself gives you the connotation of connection, relation. So what is the sambandha with Krishna? As Atma, all Atmas has an eternal relationship with Paramatma, and that is Krishna. Even this word Paramatma, we use the word Bhagwan. We will see in the next slides as to what do they indicate. How is Krishna to be understood as Bhagwan, is to be understood as Brahman, is to be understood as Paramatma. All are same. He is the supreme. So the spirit of Gita is the first point in Sambandha Gyan is spirit of Gita. What is the spirit of Gita? Lord Krishna is the supreme. So first accept this, acknowledge this, and record this in our minds. So he is second to none. There is nobody above him. He is the supreme. He is the creator, he is the maintainer, and he is the destroyer. So he does all the three together. Now you may be wondering, how do I understand this? I can give you an example which is found in our Jagat, in our Prakriti, and that is universe. Have you ever seen a spider? The most fascinating creation of Lord. A spider is the most self-reliant organism that you can find in this world. Maybe it's a surprising statement. But if you see a spider's lifestyle, spider weaves a web on its own. It does it alone. No teamwork there. It uses the web to capture the prey when it is hungry. So, and the web is so strong that you'll be surprised how such a tiny organism can create a web string which is as strong as steel. And no prey can escape it once it is trapped in the web. It eats its prey, its hunger is satisfied, and at the end of the day, the web is destroyed. So the spider is playing the role of creator, maintainer, and destroyer every day in its lifespan. Second, what is the purpose of Gita? The purpose of Gita is, there are 5 questions that we can ask ourselves. All of us have faced one after the other misery, one or the other misery. The extent, the type could be different, but it causes anxiety, it causes anguish, it causes sorrow. So misery is part and parcel of life. Krishna, in fact, defines the material world as dukkhalayam ashashvatam, place of miseries and temporary. Don't be under the influence of the 3 modes. That's his message. So as human beings with mind and intelligence, Krishna says, Atato Brahma Jigyaso. We should inquire. Ask 5 questions in your life. And what are the questions? Where am I now? Where I am supposed to go? What is the process to go there? What will be the experience during the journey? That is the purpose of Gita. It helps us find answers to each one of these questions and takes us to moksha and mukti. That is the purpose of Gita. Relieve one from all anxieties. Third point, what does Sambandha Gyan give us? It gives us the knowledge of 5 subject matters of Gita. If we can understand these 5 subject matters, when I define them, it looks very simple. I have tried to give you the realized knowledge with the help of our Gurujis in the last slide. There is a fascinating interplay between these 5 elements. And what are the 5 elements? Ishvara, he is also known as Jagdish. Jiva, Atma. Prakriti, which is Jagat. Kala, that is time. And Karma, that is our activity. All of us are born with our karma. Whatever we are, it is because of our past karma. So these are the 5 subject matters of Gita. We will be spending 60% of our time on understanding these 5 subject matters, because that gives us the pillar for understanding the philosophy that flows through Krishna in Gita. What is the process of understanding Gita? I mentioned earlier too, Vedic knowledge is infallible, complete, absolute, and above all doubts and mistakes. Shabd Praman, you can't challenge. And maybe in our scientific world, we are used to, you release something and then you say, okay, version 1, version 2, we keep amending as knowledge improves. But you will find Gita was first spoken 2 million years ago, and it was repeated to Krishna 5,000 years ago. The message doesn't change. That's the difference between science, which is materialistic, and Gita, which is spiritualistic. So this is in brief about Sambandha. Let's look at Abhideya. What is Abhideya? How do we connect with Krishna? What is the process? That is what is the result of understanding Gita. So Sambandha, build relationship. Abhideya, how to build relationship. So first and foremost, look at Arjuna's example. What is Arjuna's qualification? He is the greatest archer in this world. Also, he is a devotee. And he declares his understanding in the 10th chapter. He says, Sarvam etad ratam manye yanmam vadasi keshava nahi te bhagavan vyaktim vidur deva na danavaha. What does it mean? Oh Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality. So, he is so vast, he is so immense. It is said the Lord is infinite and we as Jiva are infinitesimal, a point of the infinite. So we should never try to apply our material understanding to judge or qualify or analyze what is being propounded by Krishna. What is the destination? The second Gyan of Abhideya is, it says, or he says, you can achieve freedom from material existence, that is moksha or mukti, freedom from life and cycle of life, birth, death. That is, you can come to the place where I live, and that is called Golokadhama. So that is also clearly given to us in the Abhideya Gyan. Jivatma, Paramatma. And we are part and parcel of the Lord, and our relationships are eternal. That's the next important knowledge that Krishna reveals to Arjuna and to all of us. And the most important thing, if you read introduction, is Sanatana Dharma. We are not belonging to any religion. We don't belong to any caste, no creed. All these are human creations. The Lord has only said there are 4 Varnashramas that we all know. It is based on what is the vocation that we are engaged in. If I worship the Lord, then I'm qualified to be a Brahmana. If I'm used to doing manual labor for my survival, then I'm a Shudra. If I'm a businessman, I'm a Vaishya. So this is how Gita gives you the clear understanding of Sanatana Dharma. So all this debate about I am a Hindu, I am superior, is a derivative which has no basis. It is not mentioned in Gita anywhere. He only talks about Sanatana Dharma, universal love, universal compassion, universal brotherhood. You can achieve Krishna by following Varnashram Dharma. You can be whatever, you can still achieve Krishna. That is the Abhideya Jnana. The third step in understanding Gita is Prayojana. If I am aware that I should create a relationship with Krishna, that is through Sambandha, I know what is the process of building that relationship, that is Abhideya, what is the benefit to me? So So Krishna says, if you pray to me throughout your life, I will help you remember at the time of death. He says, Antakale cha mameva. Remember, the beauty of this message is, assume that the whole life, for some reason or the other, we are not able to remember Krishna. He says, if you can remember me at that final moment when we are leaving this body and getting into the other world, even then that is enough. I will take you back to my Golokadham. So that is the beauty of Prayojana. So remembering Krishna even once in your lifetime is not wasted. Transfer mind from material energy to spiritual energy. What does it mean? Very simple. All of us are used to newspaper, news channels, Netflix, mobile news, whatnot. So if we are able to apply our wisdom, our knowledge, and say that of this time that I spent in reading newspapers, watching news channels, watching movies, if I can take away 10 minutes of my time and study Gita, I have created eternal credit in my account ledger. That is the beauty of studying scriptures. That is the beauty of studying Gita. That is the benefit to us. So what Krishna says in Gita is, he says, Yad karoshi, yad asnasi, yad juhoshi, dadashi yad, yad tapashyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mad arpanam. What is the meaning of this? He says, O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away as charity, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. How many of us know today is Ekadashi? So this is an austerity for the Lord. If you maintain Ekadashi, if you follow Ekadashi, you have remembered Krishna today. So that's what is the message. The Prayojana is transfer your material energy to spiritual energy. The next important lesson learning to all of us. In Prayojana, Gita teaches how to engage in devotional service. So we are blessed with mind. We all are aware we are intelligence. Krishna says, if you can channel your mind and intelligence in thoughts of the Lord, then you are absorbed in devotional. May look very profound. What is this statement? What are we doing today? We are listening to Gita. I am speaking and you are listening. I am eternally thankful to all of you because you are spending your valuable time listening to Gita. So what have you done? You have channelized your mind, you have channelized your intelligence in listening about Krishna. That is devotional service, nothing more than that. Yad karoshi, yad asnasi. Whatever I do in the course of my day, I will do it and I will remember you. Gita further is here. I must give you a very important message. That is, try to learn Gita with the help of a spiritual master. Now, I don't qualify myself to be a spiritual master. I am a trained devotee of Krishna. I have learned Gita and I'm qualified to speak about it. How did I achieve my knowledge? I achieved it through my Guruji. So this is a parampara. If I'm not trained, then I am not qualified. Since I am part of ISKCON, I have spent 5 years learning Gita. I am now achieved the basic qualification to speak about Gita. So when you listen to Gita's message, which is coming through parampara, a lineage of people who are experts in the subject, then you get to know the essence of Gita. So this is the most important thing that we should know before we start reading Gita. That is Sambandha Gyan, Abhideya Gyan, and Prayojana Gyan. Let us move to the next most important topic. That is the 5 subject matters of Gita. What are the 5 subject matters? You have Ishvara, Jagdish. You have Paramatma. You have Jiva, that is Atma. Prakruti, that is Jagat. Karma, we are all familiar with. We are born here because of our karma. And Kala, that is time. So these 5 elements are covered in detail in Gita. And if we are able to understand, connect what Krishna is saying, you will realize that the solution to all our problems in this world, all miseries, can be confidently faced, let us say lived through, experienced by understanding these five subject matters that Krishna talks in detail. How they're interconnected, we will see going forward. Now, of these five elements, four are eternal. I don't have to emphasize Jagdisha, that is Ishvara. He is eternal. Surprising, but true. Jiva is Atma. They are also eternal. We will see that in the coming slides. Jagat is also eternal. It gets destroyed, it gets created. But Jagat is also eternal. And Kala, time. And the profound power of time, we are hardly aware of. It just passes us by. We will know more about this in the following slides. So this is the building blocks of knowledge for understanding the philosophy of Gita. Let's move to the first one. Let's understand who is Ishvara. So Ishvara is Jagdish. He has millions of names. He's Krishna, he's Gokula, he's so many names. What is the description of the Lord in Bhagavatam, which is, if you read Gita, you can say you are qualified to be a graduate. If you read Srimad Bhagavatam, then you are qualified to be a doctor. No, you are a postgraduate. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, this comes in the first canto, Ete cha amsha kala pumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mrudayanti Yuge Yuge. So what is it saying? Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. All of us can understand what is the meaning of this. The English translation is, all of the above mentioned incarnations are either plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions of the Lord. But Lord Sri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. All of them appear on planets whenever there is a disturbance created by atheists. The Lord incarnates to protect the theists. That is Mrudayanti Yuge. He takes an avatara in every yuga to see that dharma is upheld. That is the purpose of Krishna's birth in this material world. The second verse, it says, Adanti tat tattva vidas Tattvam yagnanam advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagwan iti shabdate. Now here, most important understanding of the Lord is given to us. So Lord has three features. So the description of this verse says, learned transcendentalists, that is people who are well versed in scriptures, who know the absolute truth, call this non-dual substance, that is Lord Krishna, as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagwan. Now, we are people with limited understanding. So most of the people get into the camps of saying that, oh, Brahman is the only truth. Oh, Paramatma is the only truth. Bhagwan is the only truth. But the purpose of mentioning this verse here is to bring home and make it alive. That is the fact, is all three are features of the Lord. When you see one, yes, you have worked for that, you have realized that feature of the Lord. But it doesn't mean the other two features don't exist. So all three features of the Lord are truth and absolute truth only. So how is Krishna described? As he has three features, he is defined by three qualities. And each of these features is linked to these qualities. So what are those three qualities? Krishna is known as Sat, Chit, Ananda. So simple to remember. So what is the meaning of Sat? It is eternal. What is the meaning of Chit? He is full of knowledge. If you can create this wonderful universe, if you can create this wonderful body as a human being, which functions without care, if our karma is good, it is phenomenal. We can never ever come close to achieving what Lord Krishna has created. And the beauty of his creation is that he does not expect anyone to supervise. The procreation happens on its own, and creation is almost perfect unless our karma plays a hand in it. So this is his knowledge. Ananda, blissful. The one and the feature of the Lord, one common strong feature of the Lord is ever blissful. He is always surprised to see people who come away for various karmas into this material world as to why are you so miserable? When I am blissful, I am ever joyful. Why are you miserable? So the first prayojana of reading Gita is that how I can re-achieve my blissful tendency, because I am part of the Lord. I am Atma, which comes from Paramatma. So these three qualities of the Lord help us understand the three features of the Lord. So if you are looking at the Brahman realization, there are strong Brahmavadis, who believe that Brahman realization is the only truth. So what are they realizing? Their realization is the impersonal form of the Lord. It is the effulgence of Krishna's body. That is the Brahma's realization, or the Brahman realization. What is the Parama? So this is under the eternal feature of the Lord, Sat feature, full of knowledge. That is the Chit feature. If you are playing to the Lord through Jnana Yoga or through Ashtanga Yoga, you can reach to the stage of Paramatma realization. What is Paramatma? So after all the 8 stages of Ashtanga Yoga, of all studies of the scriptures, you reach this realization, and that is Paramatma is in every Jiva. He is the constant companion of Atma. It is a very, what you can say, when many people ask, it is very fashionable to say, show me God. If you can see yourself, you can see God. Why do you want to have someone else show you outside of you? So the challenge is, don't look outside, look inside. That is the strong philosophy of Gita. The third realization. How do you come to the third realization? Bhagwan realization. This realization is possible only through bhakti, only through devotional service. You cannot reach the Bhagwan realization if you do not adopt, embrace devotional service, bhakti. Only for his devotees does Krishna reveal himself as Bhagwan. So when he was born in this material world, in Vrindavan, Mathura, all the gopis and gopas, they were fortunate because they had live darshan of the Lord. This happens once in one yuga. So that is past. Now we all have to wait for the next yuga to see Krishna. So now you may be wondering, what is Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan? How do I understand all the three truths together? I want to understand in a simple way. The best example to describe these three features of the Lord is to look at sun. So what does sun reflect or stand for? Sun represents sunshine. All of us are familiar. Every day morning, his sunlight removes the darkness and makes us live. So that is the Brahma Jyoti, or the Brahman feature of the Lord. So people who look at sunlight and say that that is God for me, that is Krishna for me, they are speaking the truth, because the sun rays are emanating from the sun God, from the sun Lord. Is this the only truth? No. Apart from the sun, first of all, where is the sun rays coming from? It is coming from the sun, the star. So the star is Paramatma. So he generates that heat, that light. So Bhagwan realizes is the sun is the eye of Krishna. So that is Bhagwan realization. To reach this, it is not possible through Brahman realization or Paramatma realization. Through Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga or Karma Yoga, you can't reach Bhagwan realization. You can reach Bhagwan realization only through Bhakti Yoga. So Krishna says, I will reveal myself to you in my personal form only if you engage in my devotional service. So that is the way to understand how to see the three features of the Lord, and which yoga will take you to which feature of the Lord. So in Gita, you have 3 sections. You have Karma Yoga, you have Bhakti Yoga, you have Gnana Yoga. So Karma and Jnana will not lead you to the Bhagavan feature, but Bhakti Yoga will lead you to the Bhagavan feature. Let's move to the next subject matter of Gita, and that is soul. The most confidential knowledge in second chapter is Krishna's description of the soul. he very clearly says, we are not the body, we are the soul. That is the first message coming out of second chapter of Gita. How do you understand this? Now, an example. It's not one of the best examples to be speaking of, but that makes us realize the truth. So let's say in a family, the grandfather passes away and the grandchild asks his father, Papa, Papa, Nana ko kya hua? And the papa tells his son that Nanaji passed away. Grandfather is no more. But then the boy is curious. He says, Nanaji to yahi soye hue hai. Papa ji, why are you saying he's no more? He's passed away. It's a true question, isn't it? Adato Brahma Jigyaso. So who has passed away? The body is in front of us, but the body is no longer alive. The body is no longer conscious. So there is something which is missing. That is the soul. So as long as the soul is in the body is conscious. The body is alive. The moment the soul goes away, the body becomes dead. It is just matter. So we should realize this and understand whenever we go through a miserable situation in life, why do we make it appear as though it is end of the world? Krishna says, you are eternal. You are the Atma. This body is just like a pair of clothes. I change my clothes tomorrow morning. Similarly, you change your body in a few years from now. Don't take anything which is happening here so seriously. Soul is eternal. The soul doesn't suffer. It's just the body that is suffering. Second understanding of the soul. Soul is part and parcel of Paramatma. Now you'll be wondering, how do I understand this? So first, let's look at this verse. It's in the 15th chapter. So Krishna says, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha, Mana Sastani Indriyani, Prakruti Stani Karshati. What does it mean? Living entities in this world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So Krishna is telling Arjuna clearly that you are part and parcel of me. Now, why is he saying this? That is because he says, why are you worried when I am within you? Whatever is happening to you, I will be protecting you. That is the inner realization of saying you are part and parcel of Paramatma. The third dimension to learning about the soul. The soul is also Sat, Chit. Before I go into the description of that, let us understand what is the soul and what does it have within itself. So soul is the Atma, intelligence, mind, senses, super soul, that is the Paramatma, and you have the sense objects. So this is the subtle body. So when we pass away, the gross body is left behind, which is destroyed. But the soul travels to the next world with the subtle body. The soul is not alone. People who don't understand karma should be reading this chapter carefully, because Krishna explains how karma happens. So the soul, which is part of the subtle body, which is that the subtle body covers the soul. Intelligence, mind, and senses travels along with the soul, and it gets into the next body. That is how whatever good karma, bad karma we have done in our past lives, the fruits of that is given in this way. So this is how the soul construct is. Now, what is the description of the soul? He spends more than 8 to 10 verses. Krishna tells Arjuna just like telling a kid. He says the soul is in the living entity, it pervades the entire body. The soul, there is neither birth nor death. So when the body dies, the soul doesn't die. The soul is indestructible, unbreakable, insoluble. You will be amazed at the description of the soul, because Krishna wants to make this crystal clear. He says, I don't want you to come back with this doubt. Soul is eternal and you are part and parcel of me. The soul is unchangeable, immovable, eternally the same. The soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immeasurable. So this is the description of soul. So we should take positivity, strength from this understanding that why are we so fearful when we get a challenging situation in life. Why do we feel so miserable? We need not. We need not grieve. We need not lament. That is the message of Krishna. And why is this happening to us? Krishna says that also. He says that when you are born in this material world, in this Prakriti, you are under the modes of material nature. There are three modes. We will discuss that going forward. So once the soul is under the control of these three modes, you become conditioned. That's why we are called conditioned soul. What is the meaning of conditioned soul? We forget our eternal nature and we are driven by impure desires. And that is strongly fed by these three modes. So we are part of this unending life cycle of birth and death. So if we are able to engage ourselves, step back, understand what is the message of Gita, then we can really have an understanding of our Swarupa. Our Swarupa is our eternal feature. And that is, we are eternal, we are part and parcel of the Lord. There is nothing which can disturb us or trouble us. Now, how do we see the soul? The soul is, the easiest description of soul is, it's a light of awareness and energy for our activity. And I have shown this bulb. If you see a bulb, it glows as long as electricity is there. Now it is glowing. And now it's dark. As soon as electricity is switched off, the bulb becomes dark. Similarly is the presence of soul in the body. The soul is manifested as consciousness. As long as the soul is in the body, we are active, we are conscious. The moment the soul leaves, we become dead matter. So this is the understanding of soul. Is this looking good, or you feel I must slow down? Any feedback?
For me, it is just right.
Going on perfect, Shyam.
Okay, thank you then. So I'll continue with the same pace. Let's move to the third element, subject matter, that is Prakriti. We all know Prakriti because we see this every day. The fascination of Mother Nature is unending. There are no words to describe the beauty of this nature. So what is the understanding from a philosophical point of view of Mother Nature? Apart from she gives us all the material requirements for sustenance, growth, and living in this world, this is something which is talked about in very few religious scriptures. The understanding of three modes of material nature. We are completely bound by this modes of material nature. What are the three modes? You have Sattvaguna. Sattvic is what it is called. It is called as mode of goodness in English. So what does it stand for? It's easy to understand. All things that are good and pious come under the mode of goodness. Knowledge, you don't indulge in sinful acts, you don't lie, you don't cheat, and you are always happy because you don't have, once you don't do a sinful act, then what is there to fear? So a person in mode of goodness generally is happy and cheerful. And what is our objective of being students of Gita? Try to adopt Sattvaguna. So whenever we have a challenging situation in life, let us say, if I were to state a lie in the course of my job, it means I will be promoted. But yes, I do get material benefit. But then I have moved away from my mode of goodness to mode of passion, that is Rajoguna. So if I stick to truth and say that, boss, I will not lie, irrespective of what happens to me in my job, then you are in the mode of goodness. I'm giving you a very, very simple example. Second guna or mode is Rajoguna, Rajsik, mode of passion. Generally, the Kshatriyas are given to be in the mode of passion. They are the rulers. They have unlimited desires. If you see any king of the past, he used to have many wives. Why? Because he is ruled by mode of passion. Fruitive activities. He is always there to protect. And if you have to protect, you will have to fight your enemies. You have to overcome all the challenges that come your way of the kingdom. And, you try and provide for the happiness of the citizens of your kingdom. So Rajoguna is mode of passion. Mode of passion also has the connotation of attraction between man and woman, which is good as long as it is done in the marriage bandhan or in the protection of marriage. Yeah, the moment you do it outside of marriage, then it becomes a sinful act. So mode of passion also symbolizes that. Tamoguna, this is the mode of ignorance. Easier to understand. Laziness, sleeping, intoxication, madness, anger, all these are mode of ignorance. And these modes are not like they are nicely split into three equal parts. No, our life is not a simple mathematical game, 33% each. Each mode tries to dominate. And that's where our effort to try and pull us back from, let's say we are slipping into laziness mode. We say that now let me do my best. I want to come back to mode of passion. Now, let's say you're in the mode of passion. Then you say, no, enough is enough. Let me move to mode of goodness. If I can do a kind act and sacrifice something for the good of someone, let me do that. That is mode of goodness. So in a day, you keep fluctuating, you keep moving from one mode to the other. So our objective is, if you can maximize our presence, our stay in mode of sattvic gun, mode of goodness, we have done a wonderful job. Then Krishna says, is this enough? The answer is no. He says, you have to, mode of goodness is like getting 35% in our exams to pass. So you are qualified. But if you have to excel yourself and you have to come closer to me, then you have to step above mode of goodness. Now that is a description, that is a discussion later on in Gita, not now. So we should be aware that in this material world, we are under the control of powerful mode of nature. It is imperceptible, invisible, but you cannot get away from it. Now, this is the play of mode of nature provides the soul with the body. For the statistically conscious, there are 8.4 million different species in this world. And why human life is so important is that all of us have gone through this 8.4 million species before we are born as human beings. And this is the last. So after this, depending on our karma, we again go back into the universe of life and death. So that's the reason why Krishna says, make the best use of this. This comes to you after a very, very long time. What is Maya? We use this word Maya in scriptures many times. So the simplest understanding of Maya is the three modes of material nature. The interaction of these three modes, which makes us behave the way we behave. That is Maya, illusion. So if I have to step out of this, go closer to Krishna, it's not easy, but we always can make an attempt, is adopt devotional service, bhakti, follow bhakti yoga. So this is the third truth that is covered in detail by Krishna. And Prakriti, Jagat is so closely intertwined in our philosophical progress. You must understand the mode of nature and make efforts after reading Gita as to how you can minimize the effect of this modes of nature. That is coming in the next few slides. Let us move to the fourth truth, Kala, eternal time. This is slightly easier to understand. And of course, we can always stand up to people who say that, show me God, say that time. Is there anyone who can control time? In Gita, Krishna says, Kalasmi, I am time. A fantastic verse in 11.32. Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Kalo Asmi Lokakshaya Krut Pravruddho Lokan Samhartum Iha Pravruddha Rate Api Twamna Bhavishyanti Sarve Ye Avastitaha Pratyanikeshu Yodaha. The blessed Lord said, time I am, destroyer of the worlds, and I have come to engage all people. With the exception of you, the Pandavas, all the soldiers here on both sides will be slain. So that is Krishna. So how do you see Krishna? He is with us every living moment as time. We don't recognize, we don't appreciate. Time is Krishna's energy. It's the most powerful force in the material world. I don't have to describe. No nuclear weapon can come closer to the destructive capability of time. Can you tell me one empire which has stood the onslaught of time? You have Napoleon, you had Hitler, you had Bonaparte, you had Alexander the Great, you had Mughals. you had Vijayanagar Empire, you had Romans, Ottoman, name them. All of them are born, they live, and they die. That is the inevitable march of time. Time causes transformation in Prakriti. This is another phenomenal insight, how time works. And this is universal. It is applicable to all living beings. The difference between living matter and dead matter is this 6 cycle of transformations. You have birth, you have childhood, you have youth, you have middle age, you have old age, and you have death. This is the inevitable march of time. You cannot escape this. Now, the question is, we have a table, we have a chair at home. It has birth, of course, when we get it made. Does it have childhood? Does it have youth? Does it die? No. It will die, it will break after repeated use and abuse. But the difference between matter and non-matter is life, and matter is the march of time in these 6 transformations that we all go through. So this is inevitable. Nobody can stop it. Nobody can change it. This is the power of time. Next, we come to karma. Most talked about, but less of understanding. Very powerful verse in 4.1, that is the 4th chapter. Krishna says, it is a verse which you should all keep it on the tongue tips. He is describing karma in such beautiful words. He says, karmano hi api bodhavyam. Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Akarmanascha bodhavyam gana karmano gatihi. The translation is, the intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, akarmanascha bodhavyam, and what inaction is. So that is the definition of karma. So there is action, there is inaction, and there is forbidden action. So these 3 things define the 3 different types of karma. Karma is, the first definition of karma is plain karma. So when I do what I am supposed to do as per the scriptures, following dharma, then I am doing my karma. Vikarma is the opposite of karma. I am doing everything against dharma. The day I am adopting adharma, then I am doing vikarma. All the demons that we see in the scriptures, Kamsa, Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, they are all standing, symbolizing vikarma. They said, I will do exactly the opposite of what you have asked me to do. So that is being following the path of vikarma. Akarma, and this is the way of your activity to go to mukti and moksha. Akarma is, you do not suffer any reaction. And the way to make karma akarma is to try and put Krishna in the middle of whatever we do. Yat karoshi, yat jujoshi. That's the way. Whatever we do, we bring Krishna in between. That's how you can make karma into akarma. But is it easy? Not easy. It takes a lifetime to go closer to getting into the mode of practicing akarma. Now, we all know vikarma. We know that it is doing sinful acts against scriptural directions, following a path of adharma. So the scripture has defined 4 pillars of sinful life. So it's not that we have to really strive and struggle to lead a pious life or follow the path of dharma. It said the 4 things that you should avoid: illicit sex, intoxication of any form. It could be pan, gutka. I'm not talking about alcohol, drugs, smoking. These are all evolved form of intoxication. Gambling. Never ever involve in gambling. Meat eating. Now, this is another very controversial subject, but as per scriptures, meat eating is not considered to be pious. It is sinful. So with this, we have come to the understanding of 5 truths of Gita. Now we move to the last slide, which brings us to understanding the interactions, interplay, the philosophy involved in Jiva, Jagat, and Jagadish. Let's start with this. So we all know the first subject matter is Ishvara. The The second subject matter is Jiva. We have discussed. The third subject matter is Prakriti. Now, all of us are together, bound by. Let's understand the definition. So, what is Ishvara Jagadish? This also becomes a summary session. So, he is the creator, maintainer, destroyer, and he is conscious of all universes. What is Prakriti Jagat? It is matter, universe, three modes of material nature and play. It has no consciousness. It is the Mahamaya energy of the Lord, which is called as illusion. What is Jiva? Jiva is Atma, and Atma is conscious of his own self. So we are infinitesimal. Lord is infinite. He is conscious of all universe. We are conscious of our own self. Now, where does Kala play? So Ishvara controls Prakriti and Jiva through Kala. So this is his inferior energy, which is at play all the living movement of all living beings in the world. Next, Karma. So Jiva is living in this Jagat, that is Prakriti, through Karma. We get what we sow. Next comes Yoga, the most powerful word in Gita. I'll describe that to you in a minute. So what is Yoga? Is connecting Jiva to Jagadish. Yoga means connection. So when you connect to God, you are connected with the Lord. So how is Jiva connected to Prakriti? It is connected through karma. This is the path of repeated birth and death. What is our objective in life? We should cross this Maya Samsara Sagara, get into Goloka. Now yoga. Krishna has defined, as I mentioned, three paths of yoga: Gnana, Bhakti, Karma. Going further, if you have to achieve mukti, liberation, you have to adopt yoga and surrender yourself to the Lord. That is how you can step away from this cycle of birth and death. So Ishvara, Jagadish, also has another name, and that is Yogamaya. So Jiva, Jagat, Jagadish. This is called Tattva Traya. This is the interplay between these three which rules this material world. And if we understand how the Lord controls the Prakriti, the Jagat, and the Jiva using Kala and Karma, we have understood the philosophy that Krishna is trying to highlight in Gita. Let's look at this little simplistic way. So I talked about yoga. How important is yoga in Gita? In fact, Gita is known as Yoga Shastra also, because it teaches yoga, the true yoga. I'm not talking about the Hatha Yoga, the yoga that we are all celebrating as Yoga Day internationally. That is Hatha Yoga. That is a small part of yoga. Yoga is far more bigger than that. And the word yoga, why is Gita known as Yoga Shastra? Because yoga, the word yoga appears 78 times in 15 chapters out of 18. So you can understand the importance of yoga in Krishna's messaging. The derivative of yoga is yogi. And what is a yogi? One who practices yoga. And the other derivative of yoga is yukta, who is connected with yoga. So yukta and yogi are found 49 times. So totally, if you see, the word yoga, yogi, yukta appears 155 times in 15 chapters of Gita. So that is the importance of yoga. So what is the importance of yoga? Why should we connect with the Lord? That is the basic question. So the essence of understanding is, if you connect with Krishna through yoga, you can surf above Kala and Karma. So through yoga, you can surf above the two Ks. That is the beauty of this philosophy. So what is Gita doing? Gita, the first thing it does is raises Arjuna's consciousness from Jagat to Jiva. So what is the meaning of when we say, don't look at external world? The light, the true realization of self is within you, internal. That is why it's called self-realization. It is not called external realization. So the first message of Gita is don't look at the world, look at yourself, internal. Second, it says that understand yourself. So the whole of second chapter is devoted to help the Jiva, that is Arjuna, understand what is he. We are not the body, we are the soul. So the second chapter talks to us about Atmagyan. We are the soul. We are eternal. We are not destroyed by anything. Then why should we be so miserable whenever some sorrow overcomes us or we face a sorrow situation? We should remember this. We are not the body. We are the soul. This itself gives you a great amount of positivity. If we are part and parcel of Krishna, if Krishna is present within us, each living being is Paramatma, we are connected to Krishna through yoga, then what is there to fear? That is the message of Gita. In the first 6 chapters, Gita talks about detachment, Karma Yoga. So what is he saying is the same. He says, detach yourself from Jagat, attach yourself to the soul. At least start looking within you. I am present within you as Paramatma. So that is detachment from Jagat, attachment to Paramatma within you. Going forward, in the 7th chapter, Krishna moves to another concept. He says, Mayi asakta manapartha yogam yunjam mad ashrayah asamshayam samagram mam yata gnanashyasi tat shrunu. Arjuna, I will tell you now how to practice the process of yoga, by which what will happen? You can make your mind attached to me. Mayi asakta manaha. So, in the first 6 chapters, he talks about detachment. And in the 7th chapter, he's talking about attachment. And he's talking about attachment to whom? He's talking about attachment to Paramatma, who is present within us, who is the Lord Ishvara. So this is how Krishna talks about 2 fundamentally strong concepts. Detach yourself externally, attach yourself internally. Is this the only understanding? The last and the most profound understanding is, I am part of Krishna. When the soul has super soul within it, the Atma has Paramatma within us, then we are always connected with Krishna. It is just that we have to become realized. We should become aware of his presence within us. And how is that possible? That is possible through Bhakti Yoga. So the message is, I am part of Krishna. He re-emphasizes, I am part of Krishna. Don't be apart from Krishna. Look at the play of words. Part of Krishna, but don't be apart from Krishna. So don't move away from Bhakti Yoga, come towards Bhakti Yoga. Now, Gita also is giving us, I told you, it relieves us from all anxieties of this world. So how does this do it? So it is telling you you are eternal. It is telling you you are part and parcel of the Lord. You are part of Krishna. You are not apart from Krishna. And the third thing, he says that when you are connected with me through yoga, you are emotionally investing your time in me. So whenever you have a miserable situation, what you do is you switch off from that situation and switch on your devotion to me. And when you do that, the misery doesn't disappear, but your response to misery has changed. And that is what makes the difference between being happy and being unhappy. So thinking about Krishna gives us relief. So how should be this process? It said, what does any river do? What does Ganga do? In Srimad Bhagavatam says, the purpose of river is to flow to the ocean. So the purpose of our life is to be in yoga with the Lord, be connected to the Lord. Does the river ever change its path? Yes, it may change its path. It may change its course, but does it change its goal? Does it change its destination? No, never. As long as this world exists, the river will be born and it will reach the ocean. This is the truth of life. That is what we should adopt in our lives. Be conscious of Krishna, be flowing towards Krishna, do it step by step. So what is the best prayer we can offer to Krishna? Say that, how I can serve you. That is the best prayer to Krishna, and Krishna will answer it through Gita. I will conclude this saying, whatever karma, whatever kala may get us to, Krishna will get us through. He will help us navigate and reach Goloka. That is the message of Gita. Thank you very much. Now, in the thank you slide, Gita says that Adi Shankaracharya has created this Gita Mahatmya. So I will just read one of them. There are 7 of them. which gives you the importance of studying Gita. So the first one, let me read out. Gita Shastram idam punyam ya patet prayatat puman Vishno padam avapnoti bhaya shokadi varjitaha. So every study of Gita, you must say this Gita Mahatmya. That is the essence of this. Gita is a transcendental literature to be read carefully. If one follows the instructions of Gita, one can be freed from all miseries and anxieties in this life, and one's next life will be spiritual. Thank you very much. And now the floor is open to all questions.
Shyamji.
Yes, sir.
So far, I think this is the fourth or fifth session which I have been attending. So many chapters you have covered, but
Right.
everything was telling in a different way, one yoga and other things.
Right.
But this one particular chapter, which was there in my mind, I think I have taken it up with you personally also.
Right.
Which you have covered how karma is working on us and how we get freedom from all these things once you adopt.
Yes.
And how it affects in our next birth, if at all anything is there.
Yes.
All these things have been very clearly covered. I think this session has answered all my queries in my mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. In fact, the Jiva Jagat Jagdisha Tattvatraya, if we understand that, and I can tell you, we can spend our lifetime, you still are not close to the perfect understanding. We think we know, we think we understand, but there are so many hidden nuances. But so Krishna reveals himself to you as you go closer to him. The more you devote yourself to him, the more he reveals himself.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Can I ask you something?
Please, uncle.
Sure. You say like Prabhupada wrote this, it is Gita as it is. Okay. So what it is, nothing else you should understand except, take it except what Krishna says. Okay. I think there is some disturbance. Somebody got this or not. Anyway, but if it is so, you said, I think, did I hear right that you said there is no interpretation?
Yes.
There is no. This is as it is. Okay.
Yes.
In that case, why does he write purport on each shloka?
Okay, good question. Now, yat karoshi, yat dadashi. How do I understand what is yat karoshi and yat dadoshi? If I don't explain it to you first, so what I will do as Srila Prabhupada, I don't have that capability. So what does Srila Prabhupada does? He first gives you the word-to-word meaning, and then he explains to you the translation of it, and then the purport is meant to give an understanding. And you won't believe, uncle, that even after reading the purport, I have read introduction many times, but the last slide that I showed you is realized knowledge, which is flown through my Guruji. It is, you read it n number of times, you will not understand the interconnections until you put all together on a piece of paper. What is Krishna trying to do? What is the interplay? So the purport plays the role of shining light on the meaning that Krishna has offered us.
Yeah, true. What I meant was, although it isn't. I mean, okay, you may be a scholar in Sanskrit, you may know, and just reading the shlokas, nobody can understand. Of course, or you got your own interpretation. My purpose of following Gita was to exactly rather otherwise you can read in English reams and reams of pages and pages what Gita says. Again, it's interpretation. So really, that's what I mean. No, with little bit of knowledge of Sanskrit. So that's why I'm reading. Okay. But in the end, many people, I read a few discourses by few scholars. And they say, oh, forget all this, everybody gives their own interpretation. Just read and try to understand. I agree. And because even Prabhupada, he's got your own interpretation. Because I got two, I think, I can't remember now, first time when I came across it, I was so horrified because he is obviously critical of Advaitis.
Right.
I mean, it's so blatantly anti-propaganda or something in the guise of purport. So things like that. In this, even a book like which is supposed to be, very respectful book, things like that are misleading. That's one thing, and you do need various explanation. Many I read few of them. I got one more copy or two, three, and I go from one to the other because one explains better than the other. But it is hard. I agree with all the various things. Like to understand just the word yoga and yukta, it took me 3 years and something. The very basic, scratching the surface. I'm still. You don't need help. All right. Without it, it is difficult. But all of them do have their own shortcomings, and so something to recommend as well. It's more absurd. I don't think we'll debate this because you'll be sitting endlessly.
Yes.
But in this connection, I'll come. For example, now you describe, say, Jagadish, Isha, Jagadisha, Jiva, and what are those three?
Jagat.
Third one is Bhagavan, what, right?
Jagat.
Jagat. So, of course, like very first lecture I heard of you, like saying, the five truths and the Kala and what is, Jiva and all those going. See, again, somebody asked and you beautifully said, what is Paramatma, what is Brahman, Paramatma, and the Bhagavan,
Right.
like, so why Krishna makes it so difficult even for, like we have got to go through these books to understand, oh, these are three different forms. I know your slide beautifully says, like, you want the last one is because you need the form, right? First one is Jivatma, of course, there is no form, like you put the sun's, energy.
Right.
And the second one is Paramatma, Supreme. Third one is Bhagavan. Even going through all these stages, it is difficult understanding. As a scale, we want more of a comment. Coming to one more thing, last thing, which I've been this afternoon, we are having a Gita class, which I've been attending. In many places, Krishna says, the book it says, Isha, Ishvara, right?
Right.
Now, some places it has been given, this divine contest that Ishvara is actually Shiva. It's in that, but in some places, Ishvara, I just had a quote. I just lost that one. I'll tell you in a minute. I think I may have that.
Okay.
So, Ishvara, I mean, like, even that is difficult to understand. Ishvara, I'll just, yeah, I think it is chapter 11:9. Okay.
Okay.
11. Well, I think here you might cop out because it is Sanjay Watch.
Okay.
It says, right? Evam muktva tato rajan mahayogeshwaro harihi. Right?
Okay.
So here, now Ishvara here, right? In one more place, he says Ishvara literally is interpreted as Shiva. So
Okay.
these, even the same words, see, these differences in the words and the meaning. That's what I'm coming back to. The purport, when people have explanation, there are these contradictions. Otherwise, Isha means Bhagavan, right? Well, God, Lord. Okay.
Right. Right.
But at places it is Ishvara also means Shiva.
Okay. So
Yeah, in many places, just one final thing. In many says, he says, you come worship only me, but not the demigods.
correct.
Right?
Correct.
Like Brahma, and like, of course, among demigods, if I understand right, Brahma, Ishvara, that is,
Yes.
Shiva,
Right.
and others are, they're called demigods.
Yes.
But in chapter, we are studying now chapter 11,
Right.
and then he says Ishvara is on par, is considered on par with Vishnu or Bhagavan. Am I right? So in some places, in other words, he is demoted as a demigod, Shiva, and in some places he is on par with Lord.
Okay. So the basic thing is that how do we reconcile who is powerful, or
Yeah.
in one place it is Krishna, in one place it is Ishvara. So now this is a very good question, and the answer is not as perfect as I would like it to be. It is said scriptures are many a times based on the circumstance of that particular chapter. So the way we should reconcile this as students of Bhakti Yoga is Krishna is the supreme. And if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives you the entire genealogy of how Brahma was born, how Ishvara was born. And if I were to give you a very short description, it says that Krishna has got 64 opulences or 64 qualities. So Shiva has 5 less than him. Brahma has 5 less than Shiva. And we as Jivas are 5 less than Brahma. So this is the way to reconcile. And you will be surprised to note, uncle, that in Bhagavatam, there are 8 Ishwaras, 8 Rudras. So,
Very good.
So the root of our scriptures runs deep. And in Gita, if you were to say that, see, in Gita, what you will understand the philosophy of how the 5 truths of life play, how we can surrender to Krishna and achieve Goloka. That is the manual for that. But if you are a serious student and you say that, no, I want to Atato Brahma Jigyasa, I want to really go deep, then you will have to get into Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, go into the Vedas. So it becomes the lifetime study. That's what I can respond. And how to understand this, in a simplistic way, when Krishna says, I am the supreme, the 11th chapter is dedicated to Vishwarupa Darshana. In no Vedas, in no other scripture has anybody stood up and said, now I will give you Vishwarupa Darshana. So if we put the elements together, we can see what is the message. Yes, there will be outliers. When you try to draw a graph, there will be 3 or 4 points which don't fit the curve. But those are to be reconciled with respect to what circumstances that mention has come. So it requires deeper study of philosophy.
Yeah, thanks. I agree, because as I said, I've been doing 3 years, and second proper reading with a teacher.
Right.
There are a lot of these contradictions, and as I said, I know everything helps. Your own lecture, I know, that's why even today I make points, and your references, because I'm every shloka you quote, I'm referring to it with my Prabhupada book. It does help. Thank you. I will end this, and I'll give chance to others to ask.
Oh yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sham Radha this side. I have a very simple question. While I understood the difference between karma and vikarma, but akarma is not very clear.
Okay. Akarma is where you perform any activity which has no reaction. And the only way to do that is to put Krishna in between, in the middle. I'll give you a simple example. जब हम मंदिर जाते हैं, so वहां पे हमें तीर्थ मिलता है. तीर्थ क्या है? पानी है ना. But how did it become तीर्थ? Because उसको भगवान की चरणों में हमने इस्तेमाल किया है, उसका जो चरण धोते हैं उसको हम लोग तीर्थ करके स्वीकार करते हैं. So what happened? The water from the container goes and cleans the feet of the Lord, the deity. It is such a powerful, because all of us can't go and worship Krishna's feet. So we go and worship the deity's feet. And that water becomes tirth. That is the answer. So another way of understanding is that don't expect results for what you do. Nishkam karma. That is also another example of akarma. And the way to understand this concept is that akarma is very difficult to reach, because when you are living in the three modes, you do make mistakes, you do slip up, and then you do penance to overcome that. So there are few acts which can be by themselves on an akarma platform without any reactions. Now, second example is, what do I do when I cook food? If I offer it to the Lord as prasad, if I offer it to the Lord, it becomes prasad, and I consume that food, Krishna says you will not have any sinful reactions, whatever you offer to me. And he says, patram pushpam phalam toyam. He is not asking you to give him gold, diamond, jewelry, nothing. Offer me water, offer me leaf, offer me fruit. With love, I will accept it. So what did I do? I have converted a ritual into spiritual act. So that is how you start aiming to go towards akarma. It is an ideal. So you say, it said, you know, when you aim for perfection, you will achieve excellence. So akarma is at that level.
Okay, thanks. Clear.
Thank you, Radha. Any other questions?
Hi, Prabhuji. Arnav this side.
Yes, sir.
Going to the last question, when he asked like whether Krishna is the supreme or Shiva is the supreme,
Right.
or whoever is the supreme, isn't it like it's we, the human personas, our prakriti, and it is our love for that particular deity and make it supreme, is it not? But actually it is just the one, and it's very simple. But we love, if somebody have love Ganesha, and he's the supreme, and that can be another form of Krishna only, we don't know. And it is just like that, because starting, like when we say Brahma is the creator, Krishna is the Vishnu
is a maintainer,
maintainer, and Shiva the destroyer. Basically, it's just the one who is doing everything, but changing the name and shape just for our prakriti. Isn't it like that? As Sri Ram Krishna Paramhansa says. Like.
Right. So see, the way we should understand this is that, let us say now we are all eating food, okay? And we have most sophisticated organs in our body. You have the brain, you have the heart, lung, liver, etc., etc., etc. So how do I feed all of them? I eat food, it goes to the stomach, and the stomach has a program which will ensure that the food is digested and the nutrients, whatever is required by which part, is given to the body, that body part. It happens seamlessly. It happens without any direction, without any guidance, without any monitoring. Autopilot. So similarly, God, Krishna, has created demigods. Now, we should look at this dispassionately. He is not saying that, you know, I am important and they are not important. He says, they are part and parcel of me. You are also part and parcel of me. They are slightly ahead of us. That is why they became demigod. So, and there are, in as per our Hindu understanding, there are 33 crore Devi Devatas. So all of them have been created by Krishna for a purpose. You pray to Saraswati, you get knowledge. You pray to Ganesha, there will be no Vignaharta. So this is how we should understand. And we should not get into this narrow question of why. Why has no answer in most of the times. How to reconcile is possible to answer. But why is a self-limiting question. And he, in Gita, he also very clearly clarifies that. What is the intelligent way of worship? He says, you worship me. What is the unintelligent way of worship? He says, worship through the demigods. Choice is yours. He says, I'm not compelling you. So once you know, oh, this is what Krishna is trying to say, then let me pray to Krishna himself. Now that is the choice we make as an individual. That is our sukruti, our karma. It will take us to the path of Krishna. Now you could have studied so many other scriptures, but you have decided to study Gita. Why? Because you have some sukruti from your past life. That is why we are all here discussing about Krishna. We could have discussed, now there are so many programs which talks about the Mahatma of Ganesha, Mahatma of Durga, isn't it?
Correct.
So that's how we should understand.
I think that's a good statement. You know, why is no answer? We should say how. I think
Yes.
that's a very good,
Yes, yes.
very good
And
approach.
in any part of scriptures, Krishna says, if you start asking why, then you are challenging Shabda Pramana. Don't do that, because material knowledge is never going to give a satisfactory answer to spiritual question.
You're
And
right.
we are not on the platform of spirituality completely to understand what Krishna is saying. Now, for example, when Arjuna says innocently, you show me the Vishwarupa Darshana. Gita, he says, you can't see me even if I show you. Then Arjuna says, how do I see? He says, I will give you Divya Chakshu. Only with that eyes you can see my Vishwarupa Darshana. Similarly, to see the complete truth of Krishna, it is difficult and materially impossible. Any other questions? It could be
No.
question, it could be a comment. It's a sharing session, basically.
Basically, I think after whatever, after the session, whatever we discussed, the doubts and the clarity, like, it has given more clarity, and whatever the thoughts in your mind, I think I had the same thoughts in my mind. Okay, so many 33 crores of gods. And then we also talk about Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, creator, maintainer, destroyer. And at the other side, Krishna says that, yes, I am the only one, and then you forget all other things. So you just follow me, and you will achieve whatever you want. So, or you just follow me, forget others. So basically, it can give us one clarity. Yes, okay, don't think too many things, don't think too many gods, focus on one, probably you will achieve peace and whatever you want to achieve in your life.
Exactly. That is the realization we should reach.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
Many people have this wrong conception that, we are followers of 33 crore Devi Devatas.
Yeah,
So we don't have the concept of one God. So Krishna is very clearly saying they are all part and parcels of me. They are my representatives. So I don't get involved in my creation. I have Vishnu, Brahma, Maheshwara to look after this material world.
Yeah.
I am above them. But where do they come from? They come from me. Where do they rest? They rest in me. So that's the understanding of Krishna.
Correct. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Can I just ask one clarification?
Sure. Please.
On the last and the last one you said about, because we are on this Vishwarupa Darshana, chapter 11, and you may answer to me later on the purport. Sri Prabhupada gives rights on text 8 of chapter 11. Okay, chapter 11. So, like you said, he says, "I'll give you Divya Chakshu, so you can see me."
Right.
In that, the last sentence, I'll read it. He says, Prabhupada, see, the Lord gave Arjuna the necessary power to see his universal form,
right,
because he knew that Arjuna did not particularly want to see it, as we have already explained.
Okay.
That's exactly what he writes.
Right.
So, although he's, like you said earlier, you just said, well, no, he wanted to see, no doubt.
Right.
But he didn't particularly want to see it. Why was he not? What, didn't want to face it? And yet he wanted to see it. So this statement is a bit contradictory. In page 547, my edition, of course, different edition will be. Anyhow, Shloka 8 of chapter 11.
Right. So the way to understand this, uncle, is Arjuna is going through a confused stage like all of us do. And Krishna is Bhavagrahi. He knew what Arjuna wanted to actually achieve. That is to see Vishwarupa Darshana. And if you go further, it also says that, he looks at Vishwarupa, then he says, you show me Kala Rupa. And the moment he shows Kala Rupa, Arjuna is afraid. Arjuna says, I don't want to see this Kala Rupa anymore. Please go back to your 400, 200 form. Because Kala Rupa is so bhayanak, he says he sees the whole Kurukshetra army dead. Bhishma is gone, Drona is gone, Karna is gone. He says, I can't see this. So Krishna says, this is what is my Kala Rupa. You want to see? I have shown you. You don't want to see? I will stop showing you. And you talked about interpretation. Why this is so important is to understand, in spite of having entire chapter 11 devoted to Vishwarupa, Kala Rupa of Krishna, there are still many interpretations, hundreds of them in the market, which come back with the basic question, how do you say Krishna is the supreme? And they go back to the same argument. Ishvara is supreme, Brahma is supreme, depending on from where I come from. And I also will quote equally strong religious literature. But end of the day, we'll have to reconcile this, and why Prabhupada adopts a strong language against Mayavadis who believe in Advaita philosophy is that he says, you are giving the wrong interpretation of the truth. But end of the day, Krishna wants it that way. He wants people to believe in Brahman, he wants people to believe in Paramatma, and he wants to believe people in Bhagwan realization. That can't change.
Well, that again is an interpretation, if I can say so. And he said, this is what Krishna wants. Is you don't know, because Shankaracharya also wrote whatever it is. Everybody has got his own interpretation. It is again, it's interpretation.
See, I wouldn't call it interpretation. It is observation, because 5,000 years back, Krishna mentioned this. Prabhupada has written this 40 or 50 years ago, and the reality is Advaita and Dvaita. Now, Shankaracharya was born maybe 1,500 years back, and he talked about Advaita, and he's Adi Shankaracharya. So you cannot say that, oh, Adi Shankaracharya did not know what he was talking about. So Adi Shankaracharya represented the Advaita philosophy. So we can't say that, oh, Advaita is false. Then Madhvacharya came. Madhvacharya said, I will now propagate Dvaita philosophy. The Lord and the Jiva are separate entities. So this is how philosophy, there are 6 philosophies in this world, basic philosophies. And all 6 are true. You cannot say one is the truth and the other is the untruth. It is like sunlight and darkness. Absence of light is darkness.
Yes.
So absence of Advaita is Dvaita. Presence of Dvaita is absence of the Advaita. Because both cannot exist at the same time. In our mind, I'm not talking about in the world. So we have a limited understanding. So what we should do, we say that I am going to follow Bhakti Yoga. I want to see the personal feature of the Lord. I am following Bhagwan realization, period. Now, I should not waste my energy in saying or debating whether Brahman realization is true or false. Paramatma realization is true or false. Because then I am diluting myself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. No, you're right. Again, as I said, I want to understand. I know not strongly one way or the other, but so a few observations, as I told you. He devotes a lot more discussions. Surprisingly, Prabhupada. That's what I was saying. You could do without it. Well, he can just put it out of your mind and go to the essence.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, thanks a lot. Really well structured session. And I like question and answer session most because it elaborated a lot of, it gives some cementing effect. So that is like the way questions and answer happen. It revisited whatever we learned in the session. Few of my learning, like the way you explain, it raises Arjuna's consciousness from Jagat to Jiva.
Yes.
So, and we should always this why and how fragmentations also, because I believe the way Dvaita, Advaita is structured, I never find it because I am also learning in the different manner. I started with Advaita and now spending time to being a student of Bhagavad Gita, I find it not contradictory, but it's a complementary. Like from here to, if I want to visit my place, there is the way I am going by the air very fast. I can
Right.
take train, I can
Right.
go by road, and those all things leading to some things like the Arjun is traveling from Jagat to Jiva. So it is, I find it's a progressive elaborations, and with the discussions and questions and answer it has come. I like the most important part. We should try to concentrate more on the how, and that is like the fundamental path of the liberation.
Yes, that is where learning comes.
Yeah. So thanks again for this all, and we really enjoyed all the things which was discussed. And thanks to participants also, they bring a lot of good questions, and
Yes.
that is the most important part I have seen over here.
Sincere thanks to each one of you for sharing your questions. That is when the wisdom, the knowledge has to become wisdom. That is realization. So when we discuss this, in fact, many a times Arjuna asks questions in Gita, not because he has a doubt in his mind, because he knew that people will start questioning so many things about Krishna being Bhagwan. So he says, show me Vishwarupa Darshana, show me Kala Rupa. So it is, one is he is doing it because he is asked to play the part, the role by Krishna. And what is the learning is, it is learning for the entire mankind for time immemorial, that Krishna is the supreme. And why is he supreme? Because show me another Ishvara in any other scripture coming out and saying, I will show you Vishwarupa Darshana. So if you want to reach a positive conclusion, you can reach a positive conclusion. If you want to reach an in-between conclusion, that option is also open.
Thank you. As they say in all talks, it's the Q&A, question and answer, is the most illuminating part.
Yes, it's the icing on the cake, the cherry.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks.
So if there are no questions, then I will call this session to a close. All glories to Krishna.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy your evenings.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.